Hi YouTube, Engineer Boy 100. Today's video is another DIY style video for the BMW X3Ms and X4Ms. The issue that I'm addressing today is a message that a lot of us have been getting, and it says drivetrain malfunction. Okay, in my opinion, the drivetrain malfunction nomenclature for this error is actually a misnomer. It should probably be something like powertrain malfunction, and I'll explain. So in the course of figuring out what was wrong with my vehicle, and I think I've figured that out, and I'm going to fix it today, and I'll let you watch that, I came across several other issues that could generate this same error message. Okay, I'm going to go over 10 of the ones that I came up with over the course of my research, and then there are two bonus that I came up with after that. Actually, this morning, one of the guys in one of the forums messaged me and said, "Hey, what about these? This is what was wrong with my car." So stay tuned for the end, and I'll tell you what those last two could be. But in addition to this dozen or so that I'm going to cover today, there are more things that could go wrong. Okay, so now the reason I say it should be powertrain instead of drivetrain, because it's kind of misleading. When you think of drive, you think of like the drive shaft, and you think of things that are more mechanical in nature. But what's really happening is something is affecting the efficient and safe operation of the engine or transmission. That's what generates this error. So what could do that? So I've generated a list that, in my opinion, is the order in which you should kind of try and figure out what's wrong with it. But in addition to that, get the codes if you can, if there's any codes, because sometimes there will be codes for some of the issues. And also think about the history of the maintenance of your vehicle. And I'll go into some more detail about that as I explain how I figured out what I think is wrong with my vehicle. Okay, so like number one, it could be the alternator or the battery. The alternator fails, you're going to have a reduced amount of electricity available for your spark plugs and running other things, and your battery is going to slowly drain and going to give you less of the energy that you need to run efficiently. Okay, your injectors are not going to fire as good as they should. The spark plugs are not going to fire as good as they should. And things are going to start running inefficiently. You might get this message. That's one of the first things I would check, because it's easy. Just hook up or go to O'Reilly, AutoZone, anywhere, hook up, and they can check whether or not your alternator, regulator, battery are operating optimally, or even go to the dealer for something like that. You know, I don't go to the dealer to have my car worked on, but you could go to the dealer for something like that and just have the health of your charging system analyzed. Number two, which some people would consider number one, is spark plugs. Your spark plugs, if they haven't been changed in 50,000 miles, or you don't know, you're not the original owner, there's a previous owner, is there a history? When is the last time this car had a tune-up? When is the last time this car had the spark plugs changed? Do you have misfire error messages? Maybe you don't have misfire error messages, but you've noticed little blips in your idle, which indicate there's a misfire. Spark plugs misfiring can cause this error message. Okay. Number four, the ignition coils. It follows. And like I said, these are in order of how I would approach resolving, and how I did approach resolving this issue. Okay, because they're right on top of the spark plugs. Sometimes a coil could go out, but coils don't go out as often as spark plugs, and that's why spark plugs is first. Okay, the fuel filter could be clogged. That's another one. The air filter could be clogged, reducing airstration, or the airflow meter could be not metering correctly. Those things are a little bit harder to diagnose, but if you have never cleaned your oil filter, or you forgot to, not your oil filter, your air filter, when you do your tune-ups, you don't change your air filter, maybe your air filter is restricting airflow, which affects your air-fuel mixture and affects the efficiency of the running of the vehicle. Okay, it could be your map sensor. Okay, it could be your camshaft or crankshaft position sensors, 7 and 8. It could be a faulty fuel pump. It could be failing. It could be clogged. It could be a clogged fuel filter pump, because fuel pump filter. There's a filter on the fuel pump itself that could be clogged, or there could be a bad electrical connector on the fuel pump, or the fuel pump could just be failing internally, just not, need to be replaced. Okay. Number 10, it could be a clogged or failing fuel injector. Okay, that's going to affect how the car runs. All right. So the last two are probably going to be a little less frequent. At least one of them is going to be less common. And that is, you could have a clogged catalytic converter. Catalytic converter could be failing, and that could be caused by some of the other issues, like if you have a fuel injector that's stuck open and it's dripping fuel, and that raw fuel is going into your catalytic converter. That's going to burn out and clog up your catalytic converter. So one issue could cause another. Okay, and then that's going to cause some back pressure in your exhaust, and that's going to affect the efficient running of the vehicle. Another could be a stuck, and this is one of the guys, I don't know if he wants to mention his name, so I won't mention his name. I didn't ask him, but it could be one of the exhaust flaps. On either side of our vehicle, we have exhaust flaps for the different. One of those could be stuck closed. All right, and that could restrict your airflow as well, and that is actually what caused his error. So in my particular case, I believe that I have some misfires, and I believe it is my spark plugs. So today I'm going to let you watch me change the spark plugs. So let's go out and do that. Now, another thing I want to recommend is learning how to think these processes through, learning how to troubleshoot. Is the tool that you need to use in conjunction with the codes, with the knowledge of the vehicle's maintenance history. These are all things that you use together to solve problems like this. And I wrote in a chapter in my book, Your Car Care Companion, chapter 19. There's a link to it in this video below. Download it for free. Go to chapter 19 and teach yourself very step by step, the way I teach, how to think about problems that you get. And it'll make it a lot easier for you to resolve issues and to think them through and figure out what's wrong with the car. Then it takes a lot of the mystery away, and you think, okay, well, now, engine codes and engine lights are your friend. They let you know when something's wrong. They point you in the right direction, but you still got to do some thinking, some diagnosis, or either, give some guidance to your mechanic as to where the issue is from your experience of what the symptoms were when you started having problems. So anyway, without further ado, let's go on out, change these spark plugs, and I'll show you which tools that I am going to be using. The main ones that you need to get in advance. This car requires a very narrow, and I'll show you when we get out there, but a very narrow spark plug socket. Okay, and I recommend that you use a wobble head style extension, because it's going to give you a little bit of forgiveness when you go to tighten or loosen the spark plugs. You don't want to torque to the side and actually crack on those plugs and break it off in that cylinder head. So I recommend wobble head extension. You have to have a narrow socket, and then once we get the plugs out, I'll tell you all other details. I recommend, some people say, oh, don't put any lubricant, and that's correct. Oil on the threads will clog later and make them get stuck, but you don't want to put Loctite or anything like that. But I do put anti-seize on the threads when I replace the plugs, and I do put some synthetic grease, not petroleum based, not Vaseline. I put synthetic grease on the bases, on the outside, on the bases of the coils. You can also, I believe you can use, I'm not 100% sure, but I think you can use the grease that they give you for your battery and stuff like that. What do they call it? Dielectric grease. I think that'll work too on those, but I just use synthetic grease. I get it from Mercedes, and I use that on my connectors, rubber connector boots on my ignition coils. So, without further ado, for real this time, let's go out to the shop. I'll change these plugs. Change these plugs is pretty easy, straightforward. It's easy, no mystery to this. You just pop off the cover. There's some little clips on the coils that you have to push up and then click back, and then they just slide right off. Take the coils out. Carefully take your plugs out. Make sure you have the correct gap. I think, don't quote me on this. I've checked a couple of places, but I think for a stock vehicle, the correct timing gap on the plugs is 25 thousandths. call your local dealer, get that for yourself, double check me, don't trust me on this, but I think that's what it is as a reference. I think it's 25 thousandths of an inch, and that's what I'm going to be using on my vehicle. So I'll put links in the description, and I will put affiliate links to, if I can find them, the thin sockets, the wobble head extensions, and just a few basic things will be in the description, in addition to a link to my book, free to my book. And hopefully that can help whoever needs those items. So for real, let's go out to the shop and change these spark plugs. This is our beautiful X3M competition engine bay. This engine cover has to be removed, and to do that you have to take off the strut bar, you see going across the center here, and also these two plastic covers front and back. Now the plastic covers come off by removing these T25 torque screws, okay, and they're all around. Okay, you have to get all of those off. And then, before you do that, you have to remove this strut bar, which requires that you pry up these little plastic connectors here and remove this side strip all the way down. Take all these off, okay, and that will allow you to lift this up without damaging it. You take out these little, let me get a screwdriver, these little these little plastic fasteners, and you can take those out, and underneath here there are two 13mm nuts, one here and there's one farther back, and that's why you want to take this thing off. You don't want to rip this trying to get to it, but there's another one back in here. Okay, so that's going to be the same on both sides. Okay, and then you can remove the strut bar, take out the T25 torque screws, and then we will get down to the spark to be able to get to the coils and spark plugs. So I'm not going to make you watch me do all that. Just giving you a brief explanation. Next, you'll see this off, and we'll start removing the electrical connectors on the coils and take out the plugs. All right, so underneath the brake fluid cover, there is another location where there's one of those plastic fasteners. All right, and before you move this, there is an electrical connector that you want to remove. Okay, and then you can take this cover off, and you can gain access to these two screws. Okay, you can also, it's like it's clipped on, so you see how that, so you want to be careful. You can gently, or you can leave it, but now you have access to those two nuts. Fully exposed strut nuts. It's the same on both sides. 13mm nuts. All right, so on the passenger side, it's not exactly the same. When you go to take this little cover off over your window washer cover, the trick is this is flexible. It doesn't look like it, but the way you get it off of here is you just turn it inside out. Look at that. You just push this in like that, and you pop it over that cap, and then you have access to the other 13mm nuts. Okay, you just kind of take it over that cap by turning, just kind of pushing it inside out. All right, so let's take the strut off and then take off the engine cover and get to those plugs. All right, I got all of the 13mm nuts off of this strut bar here, so I'm just going to take it off, and let me zoom out a little bit, and I'm just going to take it off and set it up here. You know, why take it all the way to Egypt? Just set it there, and now I can take off these torque screws from this cover here. Get down to those plugs. So there's 8 of those little torque screws. Don't forget about this one right here in the middle. Don't forget this one in the middle. All right, so once you get all the screws off, there are 2 little plugs in the back. You just kind of pop out on either side, and then the cover should come off. Let's see. There we go.
See that? All right, so we can remove that. And voila, what do we have here? Beautiful. So, the saga continues. All right, so next we're going to remove the four hoses, intake hoses on the intake manifold. There are three on the passenger side, you can see here. And if you come around to the driver's side, there's one more. So we're going to do those. It's just a screw on the hose clamp. And then we're going to remove this massive intake manifold plenum. As you can see, I've changed the air filters. Probably trying to clean those too, so we'll do that. And then we'll get down to the plugs. All right, now we take off the oil cap. Let's see, which way do you turn this thing? It's tight. Take off the oil cap, yay. And then I'm gonna lift off this. I'm gonna need two hands to lift off this intake manifold.
All right, so the intake plenum is snapped in on four corners, and you can't see them until you get underneath. So I'm going to pop off the last one. I've done the first three. I'm going to pop off the last one in the far, I don't know, right-hand corner, left-hand corner, which way you're facing it. Pop that off, and then I'll show you what it is you're trying to pop off once I get it off. Pops about like that.
All right, on a side note, here's the underside of that plenum, and these are the little snap-in locations, so you know what they look like. And looky, uh-oh, one popped out, but don't worry about that. See, one of mine popped out. This is what they look like. If one pops out, just pop it back in. I don't know if I can do that. See, just pop it back in and you're good to go. All right, so let's get those coils out and change those plugs. All right, just like that, and we have access to the coils and the plugs. Now I'm gonna show you those little pop-off areas. They're right here. That's the one I just did. Okay, here's the other one here. There's one up here. Okay, and there's one over here, right here. Okay, so you're popping off of those. I'm going to lubricate mine. When I put it back on, and put some synthetic grease on it so it slides on and off a little bit easier. And so I pop it on, it's going to slide on easier. But that's what I snapped off to get that off. You know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to put my oil cap back on so I'm getting debris in there. So I'll do that real quick. But here are the coils. So let's go around here and look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I start with 6 because that's the hardest one. Back here, okay? Back here. Number 6, number 5, number 4, number 3, number 2, and number 1. They have this little connector that you have to pull up, push down on there, and pull this up, and then it just slides off. You have a Torx, and I don't know what size that is yet.
All right, now taking the electrical connector off of the coils is a two-step process. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is you have to lift this little piece up right here, lift it up very gently, lift this part up, okay, and then pull this white tab out, okay, to the first position. It's going to free that white tab up, so you want to just pull it out like that, okay. Now once that white tab is out, you're not out of the woods. You still have to push that white tab down at this point to release another clip that's in here. So you push down, then you can wiggle it, pull, or gently pry. So you don't pull on the wires, just gently pull, and it will come off like that. All right. Then we have access to the coil, which is a Torx E8. E8. I use a short socket here, little die. Make sure you turn it the right way. These don't take much torque. You want to screw it, and I think this screw is captured from what I've seen others do. I think it's captured. It doesn't come out, so I'm going to try to take it out. Then you can gently wiggle your coil and take it out. Now once I get my coils out, I am going to lubricate them. Because see how this thing is like kind of sticking down there? It's kind of sticking on the plug. It comes off. And I'm going to lubricate mine with synthetic grease. Okay, so it doesn't react with the rubber, nothing petroleum based. And you do the same thing to all the others. Next, I'm going to take out the spark plug and see what we have. Doesn't look bad. But I am going to change them all. Okay? And that's basically how I do it. So I'm going to go through all of them, 1 through 6, change them out, button her up. This is how you get to it. This is how you do it. And they're all the same from here on out. So, and yes, for those wondering, I blow out each hole with air. All right, a quick tip on getting number 6 out. You want to remove these little wires here, but don't unclip them. Just take these 2 screws loose, okay? The screw on either side. They are E6 Torx, okay? Those 2 little screws. I use a little swivel head, 1/4-inch drive. See how it swivels around like that? A little 1/4-inch swivel head ratchet that fits in there very nicely. And then you can take off these little E6 screws, and then you don't have to clip all that stuff. It'll move, okay? So it'll move enough out of your way. And I'll probably unclip this. All right, more useful information. I think this clip, the way you get it loose, is you slide this out, okay? So you slide this out first, similar to the other one. Once you slide it out, you can now squeeze it. See if I can squeeze it and let you see me squeeze it. You push it in like that, okay? So I'm going to squeeze it, and I'm going to slide that off like that, okay? So you don't break that little guy. Now you're going to have better access, much better access to remove coil number 6. All right? Hopefully that helps somebody. Quick point on my extensions. I actually did end up using this shorter extension for number 6. It's a 6-inch extension with a separate socket. This socket comes off. It is a wobble head, but the confined space back there made it, I could not use this. Actually weird, it's like a 9.5-inch extension on this one plus the socket. But the extension on the longer one is 9.5 inches. Kind of weird, not 10, not 12, 9.5 plus socket. So that's a hopefully useful point that for getting back there to that number 6, you want a 6-inch extension, and that'll get you to get that plug out nice and easy. All right, so here are all the coils and plugs 1 through 6, and taking a closer look at them, the old plugs don't really look all that bad outside of the rust, which is why I'm really going to make sure I put anti-seize on the threads of the new plugs when I put them in. I checked the gaps. The gaps are all right around 30 thou. So, and that's another thing, I lied too. The gap is not 25 thou. I think the gap is 32. But that's why you check and verify that stuff either in a manual or in, call the dealership or get some kind of official information on that. Don't take my word for it. I don't want to be responsible for you doing it incorrectly. But I will be putting anti-seize on. A couple of quick points. I'm going to go back over the car and show you what happened on number 6. And hopefully that'll help too. So let's go over to the car. All right, all the coil boots have a light coat of synthetic grease. I didn't go get the Mercedes grease because I didn't feel like it, so I just used synthetic Mobil 1. I use just your standard anti-seize on all of the threads of the new plugs, so they have a little bit of anti-seize on them to make them easier to remove next time and to protect them from the rust that we got on the old plugs. So now all I have to do is put them back in and go for a drive. And one final point I guess I should point out about putting the intake manifold plenum back on is when you take it off. When you take it off, go to each corner and pull up straight. Don't pop one side off and then pry on the other. That's I think how I popped one of my little fittings off. And also when you go to put them back on, get right over the locations where you know they are and push straight down. Lubricate them and their sockets and then push straight down. I'm going to use the same synthetic grease to lubricate those that I use on the boots on the coils. And that'll help them to snap in easier, it'll prevent you from breaking anything, and they'll come off and go on easier. I think that's it. We'll have a little recap inside, but other than that, I think this pretty much
wraps it up. And I'll drive for a while, maybe do a follow-up, but I'm pretty sure this is the cause of the error message that we received. All right, we're no longer in limp mode. We have full power. It's nice. Code did not come back. Takes right off, no problem. So for me, it was the spark plugs. That was the problem. And now that message is gone and my limp mode is gone. My power is back. See you in the office.